Tells you nothing about how people feel or how they're functioning. Here is what is considered a normal standard lab reference range, okay? So for example, something like ferritin in a male, they basically sample 1,000 people, they shave off the bottom 2.5%, they shave off the top 2.5%. So basically 95% of the people are gonna fall within this range here, and that's your lab reference range. Okay? Tells you nothing about how people feel or how they're functioning. So what we can do is we can start to look at objective data in the research on what might be a little bit more of optimal. Now, the one thing I want to say in terms of a big difference between functional and optimal is when you are truly in this clinical deficiency or clinical excess, that usually confirms a diagnosis. Okay, if you have some mild symptoms of hypothyroidism and your TSH is 14, you have hypothyroidism. Okay. When we start looking at optimal, you can't think of it as, oh, this is just a new reference range that if you're above it, you have the diagnosis. It's more just an internal way to start thinking about things on, should I really be considering this? So for example, patient comes in and it seems like they have mild symptoms of hypothyroidism, which could also be explained by low IGF-1 and growth hormone, low testosterone. There's different things that could be playing in. They come in and let's say our optimal range for TSH, which we'll talk about all these, is 0.5 to 2. And they walk in and they're at 2.3, 2.4. That makes you go, maybe there's something here that I need to investigate further and dig deeper on. It's not saying that, oh, you have some symptoms and you're outside my optimal functional range, so therefore you have hypothyroidism. You have to be really careful about that as you start to even look at, there's some books out there, other courses where they will go a little too far with this, I think, and they'll start to be like, oh, if your ALK phos, one example, which I don't like this example, if your ALK phos is below 100, you're zinc deficient. Right? Not necessarily. Just because it's below 100 does not mean, which is the functional range, does not mean you have a disease process or a diagnosis. It means you need to think about, is this clinically relevant for my patient? So back to our hypothyroid patient, if potential hypothyroid patient comes in and their TSH is 1.2, you're like, okay, that's in my, what I would consider optimal range, so maybe it's not that. Maybe I need to go look at testosterone, growth hormone, IGF-1, those things, but still keep it in the back of your mind because it still might be clinically relevant. So it moves us from this black and white, deficient, excess, normal, into this, kind of phase where you're like, this is interesting. This doesn't look like it's in the normal, optimal range, so maybe I need to do a bit more digging on this subject. There's different ways that you can look at optimal ranges, and it's going to be different based on labs, what you're looking at, and patients, okay? This range of my orange here, let's just again keep using hypothyroidism, so TSH. In me, this might be the optimal range where with my TSH, if it's in there, I'm not going to be having symptoms of hypothyroidism. This might be Zach. exact same lab, his personal optimal range for TSH might be a little bit different. He might need to be a little on the higher end for him to feel normal. Or Ryan might need to have a really tight optimal range where he can't have a lot of variation outside of that, and then he starts to get symptoms of too much and too little. So again, these optimal ranges move into a more of a theory concept of maybe there's something else I need to dig deeper on, look into, and consider, as opposed to just this black and white disease, non-disease. Okay, it gets into the gray areas.